love riding my bike. I love running. I don't care what they think about it. I love it.
At that point, when I knew I was going to win, chills just went up and down my entire body.
I don't believe there are any good or bad foods. Food is food.
I still feel so passionate about getting that record that I'm like, I'm just going to do it.
As an athlete, I was like, what's my story, or what's your story? What can you learn from it? And what can you teach people?
Welcome to the IronWomen podcast. I'm Haley Chura, and I'm joined by Alyssa Godesky. Alyssa, I saw on social media that I think you spent the weekend in the woods. That sounds like a horror movie. How was it? That sounds like my horror movie. How was your weekend in the woods?
It was lovely. I have to say, someone else did send me a note when I posted that and said, the cabin looks a little murdery, but I have been watching a lot of horror movies lately or something. And I was like, yeah, I guess you could see it that way, but it's also just a really old cabin. But I did, Haley, it was amazing. I had reserved, this was probably 6 weeks ago. I was talking to Matt and I was just like, man, I miss camping and being outside and my life, and I can't do anything with my knee. And so I was like, I am reserving. The Green Mountain Club here has cabins that you can reserve, and you pay a fee and you can like stay in them. They're just rustic, right? It's basically like a wooden tent. So there's like a sleeping loft platform and then a picnic table inside, but so you at least have walls, right? And so I looked at what's available, picked one, and was like, surely in 6 weeks I'll be hiking 1 mile, right? And then to get to the cabin, and then like the days are coming and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not really hiking 1 mile yet. Like this is dire streets we're in here. But spoiler alert, I did make it the 1 mile up to the cabin, and the 1 mile down, which was lovely. But it wasn't, I think my mile pace was 43 minutes for the mile, which was, basically just slow and steady, trying not to like trip on anything or do anything catastrophic to my knee. But it was so nice to be in the woods. We actually had a really rainy couple days. But it was just cozy. I read To the Gorge, I think it's called, Emily Halnen's book. Have you heard of this or read it? Emily's a ultra runner and trail runner. I should look up while I'm talking about this, and it's her memoir about when she set the FKT through Oregon on the Pacific Crest Trail, and kind of talks about her life and her relationship with her mom. And yeah, Emily, I've never said her last name out loud. Halnon, Halnon, To the Gorge, Running, Grief, and Resilience, and 460 Miles on the Pacific Crest Trail. Really great book. I flew through it in the 4 hours that Matt and Max were out running on the trails on Saturday. And it was just nice, Haley, to be in the woods, no phone, drinking from the streams with Ramona.
You drink from the streams though. You filter that water, right?
Yes, you like.
And then where do you go to the bathroom?
So these cabins have privies built. And so you're not allowed to like pee in the privy actually, because it's like whatever materials they're using to decompose poop, essentially, like you shouldn't pee in it as well, I guess, because it like affects the whole thing. And it's like very clear, do not pee in the toilet, pee in the woods, and then poop in the privy.
Oh, interesting.
But it's like a pretty nice privy. There's toilet paper, like it's,
Are there like animals? Like, are there like mice? Like, that's what I'm picturing. Like, it looks like, I was like, when I saw pictures of those cabins, I was like, oh, I couldn't last in there.
So, I mean, you do like, they had kind of an open, like a big Tupperware, like bin. And so we put all the food inside there, right? Which definitely helps any mice activity that could be happening. I would say that based on Max's actions, there was mice around. Because he was like sniffing in like all the corners, right? Like he definitely had sense he was picking up. But this cabin's like really old, right? I mean, for sure you're in the woods, there's mice. And like at one point in the night, we did hear some like scraping outside, but it didn't sound like, I was like, Matt, what was that? He's like, I don't think it's a bear. And I was like, all right. But the second night Max was calmer. And so there's definitely mice. I didn't see them. So there's that. Okay. And I mean, Max is a really good mouse hunter. So we I think they were scared away from him too, probably. But overall, since there's no like kitchen, right? And like people are really good about taking everything out, sweeping the floor, like there's not too many things around for animals to eat. So I didn't feel like I saw anything that was scary. Don't worry.
Okay, that's good.
Have I pushed away all your fears? Would you sleep in
No,
the
oh, I
cabin?
mean, like I'm still assuming you're like sleeping in a sleeping bag. Like, is it cold? I
Uh
mean, I am built for like I look at my dog Cowboy, and that dog is, he's technically Australian Shepherd, or quote unquote working dog, but he is built for leisure. And I feel like we are the same creature.
you could do
I'm
it.
built for leisure.
The wooden
I
floor
like a
of this
bed. I like a shower. I like warm water. I like a toilet that flushes.
The wooden, yeah, you're still sleeping you bring a mat, like a camping mat if you want, and a sleeping bag. And there is a wood stove though. So in the winter, it's actually a big ski cabin. Most people go in ski time because the ski trails like are all around it. And so, that's actually, yeah. So most times it's like snowing outside and then you have the wood stove and I'm sure it gets like really toasty in there if you cranked up the wood stove, but it was fine. We were actually never cold. Like the only thing I overpacked with was like layers because I was kind of nervous about being cold at some point, but we were not cold because it is still, knock on wood, the end of summer here. But it was good and refreshing. It was nice to just kind of, yeah, be outside, get to put my feet on some dirt again. And I think Ramona loves camping. Actually, she's like the opposite of Cowboy, I guess. And so she actually really likes tent camping. Like she's so excited when she's in the tent. But I think Max is warming up to the idea. He came around.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you had a good time and that your knee held out for that 1 mile hike, and hopefully the start of new adventures. I did the opposite. I stayed home and trained a lot. And so I did a lot of exercise, a lot of miles covered, but finished each day at home in my own bed with a warm shower and warm food, and hopefully a lot less wildlife.
And Haley, I think you had pretty good connectivity, much better than I did through the weekend. And I was a little sad, I will say, when I realized what weekend I had kind of picked for that. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm missing all the UTMB coverage. I'm going to miss the Paralympics. I had a friend on the long trail and he set a new FKT on the long trail. So I missed like his final tracking and stuff like that. So I was like, man, of all weekends to not have my phone, I would love to be seeing some of this action. But luckily, we live in a time when a lot of it you can just press rewind and still get to see it, which is great. But did you catch any epic events this weekend? What have you been watching?
Well, the Paratri, I don't know if you caught this, but when I talked to Kendall Gretsch a week ago, and when we talked a week ago, the Paratri events and the Paris Paralympics were going to be split over 2 days. And then during the week, it was like they all got combined into one day. So I think it was like 11 races, 6 men's and 5 women's races were all going to be on one day. And it was going to be very early Sunday morning. And then it all got switched again to very early Monday morning. So those athletes like went through a lot, I think, in the last couple of days, all from like, is there a swim? Is there not a swim? Is it downriver? Is it with, up and into the current, downriver, and then up back into the current? And then is it all on Sunday? Is it all on Monday? And they all ended up happening this morning, very, very early, or at least early US time, very reasonable hours, Paris time, but in Paris. And so all 11 events happened this morning. They were able to swim in the Seine. They were able to do the, I guess, quote unquote, planned swim course where they swam downriver, made the turn, and came back upriver. So got to experience that current, and it did look, watching those swims is just wild. Like once they make that turn, it's like they're barely made. Like, are you gonna make it back? Kind of thing. And they make it back. But you can visually see with the drone footage how challenging that is. And they're so good. I know you haven't had a chance to watch them since they did just happen today, but I would say they're very worth watching. I think that one of my favorite things to watch is the transitions. And I love those in Olympic distance racing anyway, or sprint distance racing, because the transitions mean a lot. Super tri racing. I mean, not that they don't mean a lot in Ironman, but in Ironman, you're more like, ouch, ouch, ouch. You know, I'm like feeling for the people because everything looks so painful. And
They're like, look normal, try and
right. In these shorter races, it's a little bit more like just
it
the
could cost you
teamwork.
a medal too. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the teamwork between the handlers and the athletes.
Mhm.
And then, as we spoke about last week, how I'm sure as people have been watching all of the Paralympics, like you see how they are able to manage different classifications of disability and have athletes race together in different time differentials and actually have really, really good racing. Like, I mean, some of the swimming has been so incredible when you're watching athletes with slightly different disabilities race each other and then come up with a sprint finish. And it's just like, wow. And so they do a very good job. The commentators are mostly Paralympians themselves, I believe. And so they do a very good job of explaining the classifications and the factoring and why people are starting at certain times and why some people have different swim caps to like show like the level of support they get from handlers in transition, like that varies as well. And so it's just fun to watch. I mean, because it's all a little bit different and the gear is really cool. And so I would definitely encourage you to watch those events. Am I allowed to give a little spoilers? Can we talk about some of the results?
Yeah, you can talk about results because I couldn't wait because after listening to Kendall last week, I was like, oh, like, I had people I was rooting for. And I mean, I feel like, well, tell the results first. Yes, go on.
Right. So the wheelchair race, I did talk to Kendall Grash last week, the defending gold medalist, and she actually won silver. So Team USA won silver. Lauren Parker, who has been a guest on our show and is also an athlete who's raced up to the Ironman distance, she won the gold medal. So last Olympics, the Tokyo Olympics, that was that incredible finish between Kendall and Lauren, where Kendall came out just 1 second ahead. And this morning, Lauren did win her first para-tri gold medal and Kendall won silver. So that was really, really, really great racing. I think it was a Canadian, actually, Leanna Taylor, who came in with the bronze. So exciting racing in the wheelchair category. In I think S5 is Grace Norman, who has also been on the show a couple times.
Mhm.
And she's another American athlete who won in Rio when she was like a teenager. She's still very young. And then she was silver in Tokyo, came back with a vengeance, got that gold in Paris. So congrats to Grace. And then the S2 category, that's the one with I think, and we after Rio, I think we talked to Alyssa Seeley, Haley Dans, Melissa Stockwell, who had swept the podium there. And our intro, one of the quotes is actually Alyssa Seeley talking about winning the gold medal. And so every time I listen to our show and I hear her talking, I'm reminded that all three of them have been on the show, but this year it was a very different podium. Haley Dans won.
Mm-hmm.
And so Haley's been second in the last two para-tri Paralympics and, in Rio and in Tokyo, and got the gold in the S2 category. Alyssa Seeley from the USA was in third. Melissa Stockwell was fifth. And I'm being very American centered on this. So I apologize.
I feel like you're also centering around IronWomen podcast guests, which I love because I'm like sitting here like, I don't know, Haley, but I would think I'm picking up on the correlation here. That is, come on the IronWomen podcast and medal in triathlon or para-tri at the Olympics or Paralympics. I mean, I feel like we have a really good track record for people here. So you got to play to win, everyone. Come on the podcast.
Yes, say yes when we ask.
Yeah.
I will also add, I mean, one of the cool ones, the visually impaired category, I think it's Susana Rodriguez won, but her guide from Spain is Sarah Perez Sala, who is also our past IronWomen podcast guest and also very active pro triathlete. And so that was kind of cool to see, again, another Ironwomen podcast guest. But we'll keep asking. But yeah, hopefully folks keep saying yes, because obviously, like, there is a good track record.
It doesn't hurt your luck, everyone. We can say that.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. But still lots of Paralympic events happening, and I've just I've enjoyed watching some. I've enjoyed some of the clips that I've seen online. And I've also just enjoyed getting to see the backgrounds of Paris again. I have missed it. It's only been a few weeks. Just getting to, see that finish line with Invalidas in the background. And not that I'm even like a expert on Paris. But now I feel like
Now
there's
you feel
just
like you
certain
are?
parts of it. Yes, I just need to see the Eiffel Tower every day. Whether it's in the Paralympics on Emily in Paris on the show, or just like
I'm there with you. I just started the new season. I have to say, we'll catch up about that offline.
yeah, it's the place to be these days. But anyway, it's so fun. And I do hope, again, all those para triathletes, congratulations to everyone who raced. That was a wild day with so many events. And hopefully now they all get to kind of enjoy the rest of the games a little bit. I know that was what Kendall said she was most excited about, because the last, Tokyo, they all had to go home and like immediately. There was no like spectating and hanging around. And now you can go like eat a bunch of giant croissants and watch every other event and just soak it up. Oh,
Plus
so
with
fun.
the delay on the day and all of that, I'm sure emotions have been running high and just, tensions and all of that. So I hope it felt great to race, and for everyone, congratulations. And definitely enjoy the rest of the time out there. But thanks for that wrap up, Haley. I'm really excited to dig into those races starting tonight. I think I have some queued up, so I'm excited to do that. And Haley, switching gears, guess what happened last week?
What happened?
We got a mailbag question.
Oh, yay! It's been a while.
So, we're like, coming in strong with this mailbag question. So thank you to Alina, who wrote in and has this mailbag question for us, which I think is really good. We're gonna, toss it around here for a little bit and see what we come up with. So Alina asked about there having been a lot of posts regarding gender equity in triathlon in the women's triathlon group that she's in on social media. And most women talk about things that we've also mentioned on the podcast, such as balancing training time with work and household chores, raising kids, etc. But something else came up that had never occurred to her before: cutoff times for races being the same across the board for both genders. So she just registered for her first 70.3, and cutoff times is something on her mind. So curious to hear thoughts on the issues regarding cutoff times and possible solutions. So this is good. Thank you to Alina for sending in the question. IronWomenPodcast@gmail.com to anyone here and who wants to write in as well. And Haley, have you had experience with, what's your experience with cutoff times yourself? I guess let's talk about that.
I think most of my experience has been through at my athletes I've coached. And then also I did an interview early this year, it aired in January, with Mashonda Miles, where we really did talk about cutoff times in Ironman specifically, and Mashonda's experience with, in her case, doing an Ironman and missing the cutoff time. She did still cross the finish line, but she did not finish within 17 hours. And so was not considered an official finisher. And she did talk about the psychology behind that. At first, she felt like a failure, but then with time, she realized, I think, that getting herself to that start line and getting herself all the training she had done, that whole part of it was her Ironman. It wasn't necessarily just crossing the finish line within 17 hours. And I think also the fact that she did get to cross the finish line, I think it's probably a little bit different if you take it in the context of missing the swim cutoff and getting stopped at the swim versus missing that final cutoff. So it's a nuanced conversation for sure. This is a good question. And even when I talked to Mashonda, I don't think we brought it up through the lens of gender. We didn't, I didn't ask her directly if she thought that had played any part in her cutoff time, and if, she'd ever considered that maybe possibly women should get another certain number of minutes to make the cutoff. And that wasn't a question I had asked her either.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of a great reflection on that conversation. And I'll say that for me, I have one of my first, when I was a baby pro trying to hustle and make it in the world, I worked for an event management company in Charlottesville, Virginia, putting on Charlottesville Marathon, some other trail and road events. And I will say that from that perspective, I don't think it ever, cutoff times were ever brought up in the sense of genders. I think it was, how long is our permit on these roads good for? How long is the town police going to allow us to keep runners out on the road, right? I think we all can agree that when roads are closed, that creates the safest environment for racers, but it also creates the biggest impact for the cities and towns and, places that we have these races. And so there has to be a balance there. And so I think there's a lot of race directors out there who would love to have really long cutoff times, right? But I think that you're pretty much bound a lot of times by towns saying, like, we have to get the roads back open. We have to, get you guys out of here at some point. And so I think that's something to kind of consider in this question. And then also the volunteers. Ironman, thousands of volunteers. I know at ultras, I was saying to you that when I ran Western States, my first 100-miler, I was only 10 minutes ahead of the cutoff time at 28 miles in. And so, the volunteers at that aid station were like in the middle of nowhere, and so had there been longer cutoff times for women, you're sometimes it's a matter of asking volunteers to spend more hours than they're already giving you a full entire day, right? Of their time and energy and all of that. So I think there's a balance there too with what you're asking the volunteers to be doing and, just being safe doing what they're doing. A lot of times for these really long events, like adventure races and things like that I do, it's like the, safety of the volunteers has to also be taken into account. So I think there's a lot of other logistical hurdles when we're talking about cutoff times that probably are prioritized above looking at it from a gendered perspective. But you and I both said we might be missing something big, right? So like there might be a big part of this discussion that we do have a huge blind spot on. And so definitely to other people, if you have other perspectives or experiences, please tell us. Please write into the mailbag.
And I do think, say 17 hours is the women's cutoff, and then they made the men's cutoff for Ironman 16 hours or something like that. But then who's going to enforce that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just that's hard. That would be very hard to be out there, like trying in the dark to figure out, are you a woman? Are you a man? Like, I guess maybe you could have it on your bib number or something. And then it's like, oh, woman, you get to go, but man, you have to stop. I mean, that becomes a lot of work for someone else that someone has to do that. And I know you could just see issues coming up there. So maybe this is one where it's just having a single cutoff is just the most practical way. And maybe there is a inequality that comes from that, but ultimately I don't know how else how else we would do it without creating a whole lot of issues. And is it something that people really want? Again, I hadn't thought about it, so I'm glad Alina brought it up. But I do find your experiences with trail running interesting, because trail running, I do feel like the cutoffs, like just the ethos of those races feels very different. I know I've had an athlete who she just finished the Leadville 100 for the first time, and it's in 6 tries. It took her 6 tries of making
That's
those
awesome.
cutoffs. And so, and just the whole ethos of those events is so different than Ironman, where Ironman, I think, will usually, a really tough Ironman race has like 15% DNF rate. Like it's most people do finish, where I think some of those trail ultras will have like 50% DNF rates, like just normal, not because it's super hot or anything, just because these cutoffs are strictly enforced, and it does make it very hard. And so for my athlete, it did become a almost, 10-year project of seeing if she could do it. And then it did take 6 tries, and it was one of those things the last time it clicked. But I give her a lot of credit. A lot of it was learning from experience and mistakes she'd made in the past in both the race and in training, and things we could do better, and different mindset and different approach to the race that we've learned. And so if you are an athlete that is chasing cutoffs, I think it can be kind of a feature, because when you do finally make it on 6 tries, I mean, that euphoria is really big, like really proud of yourself. You do have to kind of have that grace with yourself in the initial, if you don't make it the first time, being like, okay, it's really hard. I didn't make it, but this is part of the game. This is part of the challenge and part of why I'm drawn to this. And so I'm going to go back to the drawing board and try again and try to get closer. And I think even if you, kind of like Mashonda said, like, even if you never make it, there is still, officially a quote unquote officially make it or something like that. Like, you still learn so much and you're still ahead of all the people who haven't tried. I've never tried a 100 miler or an ultra, so I've never missed a cutoff, but I've also never stood on the start line. So you're ahead of me.
Yeah, I think I want to say too, like Courtney DeWalter. Do you remember when her mom was trying to run 100 miles?
Yes.
What race did she pick Leadville? And
No,
the first time or
her
two?
husband just missed the cutoff at Leadville, I think. Or I don't know if he missed the cutoff, but her mom missed the cutoff. It was like 100K.
Missed a cutoff.
I think it was 100K at like
yeah.
Javelina.
Yeah.
Something.
So that just made me think about that. And I think when we're looking at it of like, okay, Courtney's mom is probably what, like a 60 something year old woman, right? Should she have more time on the course? And, it's so interesting because it's like, what do you take into account, right? Because, especially with triathlon it's very tricky with the three disciplines and all of that, but then with trail running, you look at it and you wonder, there's a lot of evidence to show with like older women, right, are just as fast and capable and, physiologically are maybe even better suited, right, to going faster at longer distances than men, right? So I don't know. So I think probably in the end, the logistics and things play out. But I think when you're looking at the endurance events too, and you're looking at the backside of the race, right? I think there's, and again, everyone, please write into the mailbag and tell, please feel free to blow, the cover off of this and tell me I'm totally wrong. But I think that probably physiologically, like there's less evidence to show differences, right? At that side of the field where different cutoffs would be needed. But I don't know.
You need the actuaries who are working on the Paralympics to figure
this out. I
like
know.
exactly how much time between classifications.
Yeah.
To come,
and it is definitely not me. I took one actuarial exam in my life and it did not go well. So that is not my strong suit ever.
Fair enough. I mean, we can't all be good at everything, but I also am sure I think of it from like a marathoning perspective. So like the Disney races, which I'm somewhat familiar with, have this group called the Balloon Ladies. And I think they're just like people who are actually in the race. And maybe someone can, but they go exactly like 16-minute pace. So they are like the very end. Okay. And it's actually like part of, again, there are people who do the race and they try to stay ahead of the Balloon Ladies, especially if you want to ride rides. So you race, you run ahead and then you might have to stand in line for a little bit, or it takes a little bit of time to ride a ride, and you have to stay ahead of those Balloon Ladies and the 16-minute pace group. And so it becomes like part of it. Like, how many characters can you get pictures with? How many rides can you ride and still stay ahead of them? So there are different marathons that, like, again, this could be like a feature. I think there's also certain races that probably have very generous cutoffs. And I'm sure that there are some athletes who, that's something that they're looking at. Like, what is this cutoff? And if you are an athlete who's going to take more time, okay, there is a race for you. And, definitely. And so I think that would be also, what I would encourage people to look at those things. But it's just, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. It is a lot of different ways, but it's an interesting conversation for sure.
It is. So thank you to Alina for writing in, and other questions can come, or comments can come into ironwomenpodcast@gmail.com.
Very fun having a question. I like this.
Haley, are you ready to hear from our guest this week?
Yeah, we're like into the final countdown, headed to the Ironman World Championship for women happening in Nice, France in just a couple weeks. I can't believe it's coming up this quick. And that's like, we're into our programming.
I mean, we really are, which makes me even more anxious about the fact that my Duolingo sends me nonstop notifications and emails every day that I missed my 5-minute goal Duolingo.
You weren't doing
And-
Duolingo in the scary cabin?
Haley, Duolingo is like aggressive with once you start missing it, they start sending you emails that are like, what? You don't even want to open this? Like you don't even want to try anymore? Like it's I mean,
You get like immune to that. I'm kind of overly
yes,
immune to it.
It totally makes me not want to do the Duolingo anymore. I need more of that like coaxing nice, like, listen, just try a second, right? So needless to say, my
Your
French
French
will be great in me.
Parlez-vous français? Wait.
Oh my
Oui,
gosh.
oui.
Yeah. I got through the Duolingo to learn to say like
Croissant.
man, boy, and cat. Like none of that is going to be helpful. Literally none of that's going to be very helpful in a few weeks. But anyway.
Pardon. Wait, is that I'm sorry? I feel like those are that's always my most used phrase in any other language is I'm sorry.
But also who is heading to Nice and, you know, maybe she's had more luck learning her French than I did is Marta Sanchez. And Haley, she is 29 years old, but has already 10 years of pro racing under her belt. Marta and I talk about her community where she lives and trains, what training and racing has been like for her so far in 2024, which involves my favorite question about T100 versus Ironman racing. She also talks about staying motivated through a very long season and graciously gives all of our listeners some tips after her course recon that she did in Nice. So we will hear from Marta after a word from our sponsors. Hi, Marta. Welcome to the IronWomen podcast.
Hi, Elisa. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm really excited to talk to you today. We are talking on July 31st, which for our listeners, that date might jog their memories because it is the day that the Olympics were showing the women's triathlon race. And so I have to ask first, before we talk about you, did you watch the race today? And do you have any initial reactions or thoughts about it?
Yeah, definitely. I watched, and I think I was also a bit nervous this morning because yesterday it's supposed to be the men's race. They got canceled and they didn't know until this morning if they are gonna race and it's gonna be a triathlon. So also I was a bit nervous, but at the end they did the race. So I watched and it was incredible.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, I think no one would have predicted from the current in the river to the conditions on the wet bike roads and things like that, that it really seemed to mix up the race a little bit more than I think people expected. Although I don't think anyone was shocked by the ultimate podium that kind of came across. And we'll talk about your early years in triathlon in a bit, but you did start out in ITU WTS racing. Did you have Olympic dreams at one point?
Yeah, I have it. I think all the people who start, I try to do a professional sport, dream about the Olympics. But for me, I think it was maybe at late age when I started, and it was more like for having fun. For me, I mean, I didn't talk really professional, or maybe I didn't believe in myself until maybe the last years, but it was maybe a bit late for me. So also for my skills and my physiology, I think always that I was watching more in long distance, but still I wanted to try and I tried to give my best during all these years racing at ITU races.
Well, you know, if the Olympics didn't happen, I think you're finding your path here in longer course racing, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about that. Where are you based out of right now, and what is your training looking like?
So right now I'm in Sierra Nevada in Spain, and it will be the second block of training in altitude to prepare for Ironman Nice. And it's the first week of three, so I'm thinking taking it easy these days to acclimatize and also recover from last week's race in Alpe d'Huez triathlon.
And how high is that in altitude? How high are you?
Here it's 2,400 meters. Yes.
Okay. So over 7,000 feet for the
Yeah,
Americans,
I can
500
tell you.
almost, 70, yeah. 200 feet. So that's quite high. And have you done like a camp there before? Is that your normal training base?
In Sierra Nevada North, it's gonna be my first time here because it's the highest point in altitude that you can go in Spain. But in December, I was in Kenya, that it's the same altitude elevation. So I was at that elevation, but not here in Spain. So it's my first time here in Sierra Nevada.
I will definitely be asking you about that Kenya stint in a little bit too. But first, what is the community like there then? Is there a support of, do you have family there, friends, or training partners?
Here I'm with my husband and also with some friends that in the next week there's gonna come. I think at the end we're gonna be like 10 people here, so it's gonna be quite interesting, and also young people who's really enthusiastic, and I think that we are gonna have a really good time.
All triathletes.
Yes, triathletes. Yeah, some of
Okay.
them for short distance. So yeah, I think we are gonna have a mixed group that we are gonna help each other.
And is this is everyone coached by someone together, or are you just all friends and you say, we'll make it work and get everyone's training done? And if you can team up, you will?
Yeah, I mean, my coach is just from Seville, that it's 2 hours from here. And I mean, I told to that group that right now my main goal is prepare for Ironman needs, but also I try to adapt. And I think also the other guys, they are quite young and they are excited to share the train. So we are not gonna follow just a strict schedule, and I think we are gonna adapt more or less.
Okay. And I know when I was in Spain to do a running ultra once, and I think anyone, who's been to Europe would say that very different from America, one on like eating schedules, right? Everything happens much later in the day. Is that when you're there to train for training camp, is your day starting later than, a typical American might think their training day is starting? Do you know?
Here, the principal problem is the swimming pool that we have to schedule. So all the workouts depend on the time that, because this week we are swimming at almost 7 in the morning, but next week it's like midday, and the last week it's almost afternoon. So we are gonna have to adapt, and also we are in altitude, but it's been really hot. So also we're trying to train early in the morning and late in the afternoon, and try to avoid midday because it's when it's really warm.
That probably works out for the typical Spanish dinner time then. So you'll still be able to, I remember being there and always being ready for dinner at 5 p.m. and no one else was ready for dinner then.
Yeah, I'm more like friends because I'm more close to friends, and I try to follow more friends' schedules, but still it's complicated
Yeah.
with the culture. But we are in apartments, so also we have the time to schedule by ourselves. I mean, we are not in the altitude center, so we rent a house, so we can cook ourselves, and yeah, depend on the workouts.
Make it work around that then.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. And so you mentioned that just last weekend you raced the famous Alpe d'Huez triathlon. You placed fourth there, which is fantastic. So congratulations. How did you feel? How did the day go for you? For our listeners, this is, you can talk about a little bit about kind of what sets this course apart from the standard kind of triathlon they might be thinking of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love the race. I will tell you that it's on my top 3 fab races. It was one of my first triathlon, and I fell in love with the place and the hardness of the venue. And my coach and I found it interesting to prepare for Nice, due to climbs and downhills, and see how I handle with the TT bike in this kind of circuit, because I already raced 2 or 3 times, but always with the road bike. So also it was like kind of test for Nice, and now we have new data for last preparation for Nice.
And so how did you feel on the time trial bike? Did you make a decision? Have you decided you will definitely be on that for Nice?
Yeah, definitely Nice. I'm gonna race with the city bike. And here in Alpe d'Huez, the climbs are like steeper than in Nice, but I think that definitely Nice it's a race for doing with the city bike because it's just one long climb. And for example, in Alpe d'Huez, it's like 4 climbs, so it's different.
It
the
breaks it
kind
up a
of,
bit
of
more.
preparation, but I wanted to try especially on the downhills. And yeah.
And so you do have, the Ironman World Championships we've talked about a little bit, coming up in about 7.5 weeks from now. So do you plan to be racing again before you go to Nice?
Yes. So after a break from the first part of the season, which was very intensive, we decided to do 3 blocks of 3 weeks at altitude plus racing to approach Nice. So I've already did the first one in Font-Romeu, in France, but close to my place, plus Alpe d'Huez Triathlon. Now the second one here in Sierra Nevada, ending with Ironman 70.3 European Champions in Tallinn at the end of August. And then the last one back again in Font-Romeu before Nice. So there's people who tell me that I race a lot, but I love racing, and I consider that 3 weeks it's the perfect period to me to be full focus and then test myself racing.
Yeah, it's not too long to go. Like you get to have that encouragement of the racing, right? Every so often. So you stay focused and you have that kind of carrot hanging out in front of you to be chasing always. I like that plan.
Yes.
And I think you had gone out to Nice earlier this year and you got to recon the bike course, which we've gone into a little bit. So, you've said that there are several climbs versus like one long climb at Alpe d'Huez, but what did you kind of think about the course just overall?
Yeah, so luckily Nice is 6 hours apart from my home. So at the end of May, I went there to do the bike course. And I haven't been in Kona, but I think the bike skills are going to be much determinant. So it's something I've been working on with a professional downhill coach to improve and feel more confident, because also the last climb, the hardest, the hardest and most technical downhill, it's like at the end, we went like 160K, so you are also physically and mentally exhausted. So I think that you need to be more confident to don't make any mistake during the downhill. You are not gonna win the race there, but you can lose if you make some mistake. And then, well, about workouts and just doing the same as always, just being consistent and enjoying every single day.
And a professional downhill coach, I'm wondering, I think I've seen Gwen Jorgensen before when she was trying to work on her downhill, using someone. And I feel like I watched her, they were on a moto maybe, and she was trying to follow the line. Is that the type of thing you're doing with them? Or is there drills or something more specific?
We didn't arrive at that point, but yeah, something like that. At the beginning, just the basics, because you think like, okay, I'm gonna go to like Jorgensen to just do downhill, but first I think you need to be confident about your skills. So as simple, I'm going to a parking or someplace that you feel safe, and to some farms, so the coach can tell you where to put your body, and first in an environment you feel safe, and then yes, to apply in the outside in the roads, because if you are there with any advice, I think it can be worse than to get any benefit.
Yes, definitely. And so what about a favorite workout? Are you always riding outside? Do you do any trainer workouts, or even outside? Do you have a favorite workout that you've been using to prepare for Nice?
I hate rollers. Yeah. So right now, people tell me that in Sierra Nevada, it's complicated because it's really up and down. But as I'm preparing for Nice, I think it's also a good place. I mean, I'm not training for a really flat course, and I wouldn't say any specific workout. I mean, with my coach, we do really simple things. So I think that's the key. Just do nothing is extraordinary. Just be consistent and do things much simple.
And what about the run? Did you take a look at the run course while you were out there at all? I think it's pretty straightforward on the promenade there. Do you like flatter runs? Is that something you're looking forward to?
Well, when I was racing ITU races, also I raced a lot of Grand Prix in France. So I already raced in Nice in the promenade. So I think after this bike course that it's gonna be quite hard. I think that we're gonna feel
Welcome the
better with
flatness.
yeah with a flat. So I think because as I race the Ironman in well, it's gonna be depend I think on the wind. I don't know if it's a place where it used to be more or less wind, but I think that we're gonna be happy to have a flat run after that bike course.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will want to see a hill for a very long time coming off the bike. So you're right about that. Marta, you're only 29 years old, I believe, and your professional triathlon career began 10 years ago when you were racing ITU. And so it's super unique to get into a sport like triathlon so young, or at least it always catches Americans off guard when we hear that. So what was your background in sport? Did you do triathlon as a child? How did you kind of come into it?
So sport has been part of my life since I can remember, and I have to thank my parents for that. Now I realize, but when I was young, I complained a lot, and I started swimming at age of 3, and from 6 to 17, I did synchronized swimming, which nowadays still is something surprise to the people. And then I quit because I prioritized studies, and then I started going to swim just for help at my town where I met my husband who showed me what triathlon was. And he was doing Ironmans and I wanted to follow him, but I had never run even 5 kilometers continuous. So it was a good idea to start with short distance. But in my mind, there was always the desire to run long courses.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I definitely did not expect synchronized swimming to be your
Yes.
background. So that's so interesting. Do you ever miss that, I guess? Like, are there moments when you're in the pool training now where you throw in something every now and then just to see if you can still do it?
Sorry, but I have to say no. I mean, I took a lot from synchronized swimming, but I think it's this kind of sport that when you finish, it's completely that you close that door. Also because of the facilities, I mean, you can go to a swimming pool just for the synchronized swimming. It's quite strange. And actually, when I was doing, and we did like 1 month just for resting, every time we started again, it feels like, wow, I need to learn a lot of things again, like gymnastic, this kind of sport that you need a lot of skills and be really consistent. So it will be quite complicated to do it just for fun.
And when you first started, you hadn't run 5 kilometers. Was it your husband who was kind of coaching you through, or did you have other friends who kind of helped you, or a mentor somewhere else?
Yeah, it started with my husband, as I say, but just for fun. I mean, I start with a sprint distance, and I tried Olympic one because as longer was the distance, I like it more. And I think year by year, I just improve a little bit with no hurries at all. But coming from synchronized swimming, I think early in my career, I was always front on the swim. Then on the bike, it wasn't too bad. I just tried to stay on the group and running. So I had to improve year by year. But since the beginning, I feel like competitive because I was in the front. So I think that motivates me to try to improve year by year.
And your improvement has come very quickly. In just your second Ironman South Africa this year, you won. You've secured that spot for the World Championships in Nice. Did you, go into this season with going to Nice as the goal?
Not at all. I mean, the main goal was to qualify for 70.3 World Champs in Taupo, and the idea was to start the season in Valencia, in Europe, in April, near home. But with my husband, we went to Kenya in December for like a holidays and training camp, and I felt really good. So I didn't want to wait until April to race. So I decided to go to Pucón, Chile, where I won and got the slot. So this was 7 January. So with the whole season ahead, I told to my coach, why didn't try to qualify for both 70 and full Ironman World Champs. So I decided to come back to Kenya and prepare for Ironman South Africa.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about that time in Kenya. And I think it was unfortunately, I've been watching some of your YouTube videos, but
no, that's good.
I can't understand all of them. My Spanish is very limited. So I get bits and pieces of what's going on, but I'm hoping today in English, you can kind of tell our listeners a little bit about this opportunity that came up, how you even, ended up picking Kenya to go to, and kind of what daily life was like there for you while you were training.
Yeah, so the first time we had contact with Kenyan people actually was at our home in Spain, because they were there training for European races. And we got shocked about his culture and the way to train. Very hard working, but at the same time, very simple. And then since then, we wanted to go, and my husband went there in 2018, I think, just for running. And because of the pandemic, I couldn't go until this year. And yeah, we went on December. It feels more like holidays, doing some safaris and visiting the iconic home of champs in Iten, Kenya. And we also brought our bikes to train, and we got surprised about the good conditions for practice triathlon, and we love it, and we repeat for Ironman in March to prepare Ironman South Africa. So I would say it's like here in Sierra Nevada. I mean, you get the conditions in altitude, but also it's like flat. I mean, the problem here is more like it's up and down, and also it's close to Ecuador, so all the year you have more or less the same temperature. So it's good for going during any time of the season.
Did you find any other triathletes in Kenya that would ride bikes with you, or was it you and your husband mostly?
Not triathletes, no, because there was a group from ITU, I think from Hungary, that was in December, and I have to say the swimming part is maybe the most complicated. So for someone who's racing an ITU, it's a very important thing. But for me, as I came from synchronized swimming and racing Ironman, I prioritize the bike and the run despite the swim.
And then how did things change as you got the spot for the World Championships in Pucón in January? You went to South Africa, got the spot. Did you take a moment to kind of celebrate and say like, wow, 3 months ago, my plan was totally different, and this is awesome?
Yeah, I think I realize now because after this incredible first part of the season, then in May, June, July, I was trying to as well race a lot, train a lot, and my performance wasn't as I expected, but because it was a really good start of the season, and then I realized how incredible was that this part, and that I can be in a peak form during all the season. So I need to take things easier, and then try to disconnect a little bit, and because for me normally I'm always the big part of the season is in summer. I mean, to May to September, and this year the things change a little bit, so it's gonna be like the first season that I need to be in my peak form at the beginning and also at the end. So we are working on that.
Yeah, and hopefully you are taking time to give yourself credit for a really solid season. I think that this is something that's very special to see, someone relatively newer to Ironman distance racing taking this on. I think it's going to be exciting to watch what you do out there. And in addition to that, you mentioned you were spending, time in May and June racing, and you were at some T100 races in Miami and San Francisco.
Yes.
Miami, I guess, was earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But what did you think about the T100 races? Do you have thoughts kind of on, adding those into your preparation as you head to Nice?
It was quite unexpected. They called me both like 1 week prior to the races, so it wasn't in the planning at all. But I'm really glad to have had the chance to race against the best of the world. I felt like if I was running ITU races again, like Fast and Furious all day. These women are incredibly strong. And just back home, I wanted to train more to improve myself. And about the organization, the way that they treat us, putting all the facilities. So I have never felt so professional and protagonist. So I'm really happy that triathlon is reaching these professional levels.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's great to have kind of the broadcasts that are reliable and good commentating. I'm loving that aspect of it as a spectator for it. And what do you see, Marta, like long term? Now you are getting ready for world championships and really two different very distances. Do you see yourself waiting to see how these go before you decide to specialize in one or the other? Or do you think maybe both are kind of calling your name for a while?
I think this year was kind of experiment, and still there's a few races upcoming, but I think that the idea for next season and the next years it's more clear. So I think that my way, because I really like Ironman distance, so I didn't want to burn out, but also I think that my way it's gonna be in that direction. So maybe for next year, I'm gonna try to focus in one circuit. Hopefully, they are gonna still doing the Ironman Pro Series. So maybe for next year, that's gonna be the goal. So this year, I cannot race. I cannot race a lot of races from T100 Ironman. I wanted to race challenge as well. So try to see what I fit, and I think that for the next year I have something in mind that more specific.
I think looking at your results, you could fit anywhere that you want to be racing. So, Marta, thank you so much for taking time today to chat with me and share your story. I think our listeners are going to be very excited to cheer for you as you head to Nice. I will be in Nice in person, and so I will be there cheering for you as well.
Okay.
And yeah, I can't wait to get to watch that race, and yeah, enjoy the last couple months of your preparation.
Yeah, thanks to you. And yeah, I wanted to apologize for my English. I know it's not perfect, but I hope the audience will understand the message.
Yes, I think they definitely will. And before we even hit record, you said this was going to be your first interview, podcast in English. And
Yeah.
I would never have known that if you hadn't even told me that. I think our listeners will also agree with me there. So thank you again for being brave enough to take that on and share your story with us.
Thanks to you.
Thank you so much to Marta for coming on IronWomen. And Haley, Marta ended the interview by saying that this was her first interview in English that she's done. And I'm so grateful that she was willing to give it a try. You would never have known that this was her first one she's done in English. And so I have a question for you. Have you ever attempted to give an interview, even a few words, in another language?
I was asked if I could do an interview in Portuguese when I was in Brazil once, and it was after the race, and I was like, no, because I at one point spent a lot of time in Brazil, and I think I got to a point where I could hear Portuguese conversations well. Speaking is a whole different ballgame, and getting an interview in the language is a very different thing. Because I got to where I could order a lot of food. I think you do what you need to do to survive.
So you're like, I can't do the interview, but we can go to dinner.
Yeah, it's so impressive.
Yes, no, I agree.
I ordered you a steak.
No, but yeah, I mean, obviously.
Have you ever done an interview in another language?
No.
In English? I can barely give an interview in English, let's be honest.
I mean, I feel like the only times I would have potentially been asked was like Taiwan, when there's definitely no chance I'm going to pull out my Taiwanese, right? Like, so no, definitely not. I like you have some basic level understanding of Spanish and stuff, and it's just I cannot it's too hard. It's scary. So I mean, thank you so much to Marta. I know what I have no idea actually what it might feel like to take the chance, but super brave to do. And again, very grateful that you were willing to do it. And so I'm looking forward to seeing her in Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Very exciting these next couple of weeks. And we'll be looking for her on that race course.
All right, Haley. Well, you keep training. I will keep, I'm not going to the woods anymore. So I will just keep doing my knee rehab here, and I will talk to you next week.
Bye, Alyssa. You've been listening to the IronWomen podcast, hosted by Haley Chura and Alyssa Godesky.
IronWomen is a production of Feisty Media and is edited by Lydia Russell and produced by Ella Natition.
Head to livefeisty.com to find more podcasts, stories, and fresh perspectives.
Thanks for listening.